It is time for my Creativity Reset recap video. Since this chapter was all about creativity, I definitely wanted to exercise my creativity when moving through the exercises in this book. I had a little bit of a hard time with it though, and I felt a lot of internal pressure because I was away on vacation for 1 week, and as well, hubby and I took an additional week off. So that was 2 weeks where I knew I wouldn't be dedicating a whole lot of time to self-reflection, which I mean is very common and a very real world way of interacting with this book. And I'm glad I had a month like this. So I pushed myself to work on the creativity chapter, and I think it yielded some interesting results. I played around with a bunch of different ideas for my theme this month, and overall I thought the light bulb theme was very well suited to my style, my aesthetic. I love how cute these light bulbs are, and they're very easy to draw, which is a huge bonus for me. In terms of the quote for the month, I found one online by Isra Hersey, and it resonated with me very strongly. The quote is, "Creativity is our most powerful tool to shape the world we want to live in," and I wholeheartedly agree. For the last few months, I've been laying out the list of exercises in the same way because I really love the way this works for me. As you can see, even though I was a little bit pressed for time, I did all of the exercises in all of the sections except Explore, where you're meant to choose 2 or 3 exercises out of the 10. And once again, I chose 2 exercises to complete. For the Arrive section, I did things a little bit differently this time. Instead of writing my thoughts out in paragraphs, I put down some jot notes of the times that creativity showed up in my life. This worked out very well for me because I thought of a few things I hadn't thought about before, or that I haven't thought about in quite a long time. And it was neat to see how consistently creativity has shown up in my life, even though I haven't necessarily identified as a creative person for the majority of my life. I loved my word cloud for this month, and I find word cloud is an exercise where my creativity naturally wants to come out. I view creativity as having 2 distinct facets. The first are creative inputs. So these are the aha moments that we get. These are creative sparks or ideas that come into our head seemingly out of nowhere. And then the second facet I view as self-expression. So this is creative expression, but it's not necessarily doing art or writing books or recording videos. Of course, these are definitely expressions of creativity, but I view creative expression as also including all of those routine, everyday things that we all do in life. So creativity can also manifest in how you do your daily chores, cooking, baking, cleaning, organizing. To me, all of these are creative outputs or forms of creative expression. Next is the pendulum exercise. I print off this page in my free downloadable worksheets. I cut out the dualities section down to size. I draw in a little dot to represent where I am between the 2 statement pairs, and then I make a few observations below. Next, I observed myself for a week, and I jotted down when I felt the most inspired, what ideas I received, and how I expressed myself, along with a few notes for each day. I found that starting around the middle of the week, towards the end of the week, where I was observing myself, I didn't receive a lot of aha moments, and I didn't do a whole lot of self-expression, and that felt really strange to me. I felt very out of sorts. I think I spent a little bit too much time doing leisure activities, and it didn't balance out well with my desire or my need to make creative outputs. I noticed a lot of these things when I was working through the patterns exercise, and the other thing I noticed is that I am definitely a morning person. I have more ideas in the morning, and I also have more energy and motivation for creative outputs. So when I was writing my book, my best time to write was in the morning, and also when I'm recording YouTube videos, I do like to do most of my recording before noon. Next, we're moving into the Explore section, where you choose 2 to 3 exercises to complete out of the 10 offered in this section. The first one I did was ideation, and I really love this exercise because it's very practical. This exercise involves thinking of a problem in your life or thinking about something that you want to work through or resolve, and then ideating a bunch of different solutions. Your ideas do not have to be practical or grounded in reality, even though this exercise in general is very practical. As you're ideating, try to do so without any constraints. So don't think of any financial constraints. Don't think about whether you would actually do this in real life. Just jot down the ideas as they come to you, no matter how silly or ridiculous they may be. In my particular situation for this exercise, I was having mixed feelings about my upcoming trip. I was just having a lot of anxiety around it and lots of doubt and regret about even booking the trip. So I started ideating a bunch of solutions that could help me with this. Things like journal to learn more about how I'm feeling, do some online research to learn about where we're going, talk to a friend about it, etc. But I also had things that were very out there that I wouldn't actually do. So I had things like don't show up for the flight, or accidentally miss the flight, cancel the trip, and that sort of thing. So this really helped because I found that there were a lot of practical things that I could do to feel excited for the trip and to reduce the anxiety I was feeling around the trip. When it was time for us to actually take the trip, I was feeling quite a nice bubbling of excitement, which was very different from the anxiety I was feeling before. So I love this exercise. I'm going to try to remember that I can do this exercise at any time. So I can flip to this exercise whenever I want to. It doesn't have to be when I'm working through the creativity chapter, because it is just so helpful and so practical. Next is the undercurrents exercise, and this exercise is great if you feel like you're not a creative person, if you don't identify as a creative person. What this involves is jotting down all of the things that you do on a daily basis and categorizing them as either creative sparks or creative expression. The key to this exercise is that you must categorize each item as one or the other. So even something like watching sports, which I do a lot of, I had to categorize that as creative sparks or creative expression, which was a very tricky mental exercise for me because I don't view that as either. But when I thought about it a little bit more, I decided that it was more about creative expression. I'm not the one playing the sports or anything like that, but when I have sports on, for whatever reason, I can do other things. And a lot of the time, the other thing that I'm doing is editing a video. So I ended up categorizing that as creative expression, even though if you looked at my list, you probably wouldn't know why it's categorized in that way. Moving on to the connect section, I was really inspired by the reaction exercise in the arrive section, where I made a list of the different ways that creativity has shown up in my life. And this paralleled very well with memories. What I ended up doing for this exercise, which I love because it's a lot more visual, is I jotted down a tiny memory and then I either drew something or I added a sticker to represent that memory visually. Disentangling, I think, is the most difficult exercise in this book. One thing I noticed about the creativity chapter is that my issues with creativity, or the things that I tell myself, the beliefs I want to let go of, they have been consistent throughout my journey with this book. So I've done the creativity reset 3 times. The first 2 times I was testing out the exercises in this book, and this 3rd time I'm using the final book. But the through line throughout all 3 resets is that I really want to follow my inner compass when it comes to my creativity and not be making things because I think they will be marketable or popular. I've been working on this for a long time, and I was a little bit disheartened to see that this keeps coming up for me over and over and over again. Whereas with the other chapters in this book, certainly the first 3 chapters in this book, I have had different things that I've worked on each time I've done the reset. So I feel like in the other chapters, I've been able to resolve something and then move on to something else. Whereas in the creativity chapter, the same thing keeps coming up over and over again. So maybe this is something for my next therapy session, because I've talked about aspects of this, feeling that I need to change my creative expression to be more marketable and to be more palatable, but I really resist doing that. Next, we have perceptions and perspective, and what came out of these exercises for me was very similar to disentangling, but I wanted to share this quote, which was from the movie American Fiction, and one of the characters in this movie said this quote. It was Sintara Golden, and she said, "Potential is what people see when what is in front of them isn't good enough. So that is something that I struggle with. I want to put in more of an effort because I want to reach my full potential. But at the same time, that means that I am admitting to myself, or my inner critic is telling me, that what I'm doing right now isn't good enough. So that is what I'm trying to reconcile now. And I also want to remember that my videos are a hobby. This isn't my job or my career, and I don't want it to be. What really came up for me when I was doing the perceptions and perspective exercise is that I'm willing to put in some effort in terms of my videos or my other creative projects, but I'm not willing to put in so much effort that other parts of my life are neglected. I'm not so driven in my creative expression that I'm willing to sacrifice my relationships and my self-care and the other things that bring me joy in my life. Next, we have interconnections, and I really love the way I laid this out. In previous chapters, I wrote a lot for this section, so it was essentially a block of text on a page, but this time I decided to just jot down one interconnection between creativity and all of the other chapters in my book. Even though I didn't write down as many words, I think I still captured the essence of each interconnection by laying it out this way. Moving on to the reflect section, the first exercise is pendulum redux. This is very similar to the pendulum section, but the dualities are different. So I went ahead and I printed off the worksheet for this exercise. I cut it down to size, and then I did the same thing where I drew a little dot on the line between the two sentence stems to represent where I am right now. And then I also jotted down a few notes. For the looking up exercise, I wrote, I see myself as someone who knows that my creativity is good enough. And I really do want to feel this to the core. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think I do right now. It's that whole dance with potential and what could my creative outputs be if I spent more time on them, if I was more focused, if I sacrificed the other things in my life that I enjoy. But once again, I'm not willing to do that, so I have to be at peace with that. Finally, we have treasures, and I completed all of the sentence stems, but I just expressed them differently on the page. So instead of just writing them down as one big block of text, I put them in these little call out boxes, and I really love the way this turned out. It's also easier to read when I go back and reference things. In summary, when I did my first reset in April of 2021, my looking up statement was, I see myself as someone who believes in a creatively abundant universe. Creativity is not a competition. And during this reset, I became fully committed to writing my book, and I ended up self-publishing over 2 years later on September 23rd, 2023. My second reset was in December of 2022, and my looking up statement was, I see myself as someone who follows my authentic curiosity and joy when it comes to creative projects. During my second reset, I experimented with sticker collages, and I started a monthly practice that has been incredibly healing for my inner child. That brings us to my third creativity reset, which is the one I just talked through, and my looking up statement once again is, I see myself as someone who knows that my creativity is good enough. So there is a lot in here about authentic self-expression, not wanting to compare myself to others, not viewing creativity as a competition, and trying not to seek external validation. I want to have internal validation for my creative projects and be proud of my work and know that it is good enough. I've left a little bit of blank space because I'm not quite sure what is going to come out of my third creativity reset in terms of actual creative outputs. So I'm hoping to fill this out in maybe 6 months' time. Before I end off this video, I want to talk about how I categorized this month in terms of my enjoyment of it, and I was firmly in the middle for this one. I wouldn't say I felt neutral or indifferent, but I definitely had mixed feelings about this chapter. On the one hand, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed expressing my creativity differently in the bullet journal, but at the same time, I felt really rushed, so I felt a lot of internal pressure, and also the realization that I've been working on essentially the same thing for all 3 creativity resets, and it's still a struggle. That felt a little bit disheartening. And I know I'm never going to be in a place where I truly don't care what anyone thinks. I continue to create and share my work because I do want to connect with people. And if I continue to put myself out there, I know I'm going to need to navigate this dynamic, creating from an authentic place and feeling proud of what I put out into the world, but also there is going to be feedback and there is going to be some external component to the work that's out there. I don't think this dynamic is ever going to go away, so it's just something that I need to be cognizant of and continue to work through. That is going to be it for my creativity reset recap. I'm going to be starting my movement chapter in March. I'm so excited for that chapter. I'll be back with the intro video in a couple of days. Until then, please take care and bye for now.